Je suis David Koudour, je suis le conseiller mondial pour la mobilité humaine au PNUD et donc je vais modérer cette session. Je risque de balancer entre le français et l'anglais, mais je vais essayer de me tenir au français pour promouvoir le multilinguisme qui est important aussi quand on parle d'un réseau d'émigration, de ne pas tout faire dans une seule langue. Donc, la première partie de cette session avait pour objectif de faire un petit peu le bilan de ce que le réseau a fait pendant 5-6 ans, les défis qui se présentent à nous. Et dans cette deuxième partie de la session, l'objectif, c'est de discuter le futur de notre travail, avec évidemment, puisque c'est le but de cette session, de mettre l'accent sur le développement et comment on peut maximiser l'impact de la migration sur le développement à travers le travail du réseau. Donc, on veut écouter les suggestions, les recommandations des différentes parties prenantes ici, aussi bien les représentants des gouvernements au niveau national, au niveau local, les représentants du secteur privé, de la société civile, les migrants, les diasporas. Vous êtes tous et toutes invités à partager vos vues sur comment le réseau peut mieux vous appuyer, vous soutenir dans la mise en place du pacte mondial sur les migrations. Et encore une fois, pour cette session, en mettant l'accent sur la question du lien entre migration et développement. Donc, pour commencer la discussion, en fait, cette session va être un peu différente de la précédente, ou cette partie de session va être un peu différente, puisqu'au lieu d'avoir plusieurs présentations, on va avoir 3 thèmes et on va articuler les discussions autour de ces 3 thèmes. Donc, le premier thème dont on va discuter est comment le réseau peut mieux soutenir les États membres dans la maximisation de la migration ou de l'impact de la migration sur le développement. Et quand on parle d'États membres, on parle aussi des pays de l'OCDE. On a tendance à associer souvent la migration et le développement uniquement aux pays en développement, mais on veut aussi avoir une vision large parce que le réseau des Nations Unies, c'est pas seulement pour les pays en développement, c'est aussi les pays à revenus élevés. Donc, on va avoir la première discussion sur les États membres. La deuxième partie de la discussion, ça sera sur les autres parties prenantes. Et la troisième partie de la discussion, ce sera sur les outils pour mieux mesurer l'impact de notre travail. Voilà. Donc, on va d'abord se focaliser sur les États membres et je vais laisser la parole pour un peu réchauffer la salle, à monsieur Dominic Agyemang, qui est le chef d'unité de migration au ministère de l'Intérieur du gouvernement du Ghana, qui va partager les vues de son pays sur comment le réseau peut mieux supporter les États membres dans la maximisation de l'impact de la migration sur le développement. Mr. Agyemang, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, David. I bring you greetings from Ghana, which is ably represented here by myself from Ministry of Interior and my colleague Cynthia from the Ministry of Interior, from Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration. Well, we cannot talk of support for member states on a GCM without dwelling them on 4 key areas. That's partnerships, prioritization and development of implementation plans, coordination, and focus on overlooked areas. The first one, which is partnership, as we can't talk about implementing the GCM without building effective partnerships and broad multi-stakeholder consultation process with government stakeholders, civil society organizations, and local government authorities. In Ghana's recent experience, this has been effectively done with all stakeholders and we are planning to have a consultation with local governments shortly. To this end, there's a need for support from the network for such broad consultations, emphasizing the point that member states tend to receive limited financial support from their respective governments. On prioritization and development of implementation plan, similarly, there's a need for support in articulating national priorities for migration implementation, especially priorities that have the potential for long-lasting impact. In this regard, the network can bring lessons learned from other countries. Furthermore, the development of a national implementation plan can be an elaborate and lengthy process, and the network support can bring a lot of value in this regard as well. In terms of coordination, migration governance is not an enterprise for a single state actor. It is a multi-sectorial in approach to ensure coherence and alignment. This calls for strong coordination. In Ghana's experience, our national coordination mechanism on migration, which was recently launched in 2003 in October during the champion countries meeting in Accra by the Minister for Interior. It is a multi-sectorial approach to ensure coherence and alignment. In Ghana's experience, our national coordination mechanism on migration was established through support from the network secretariat. In terms of focus on overlooked areas, the network can also support member states by bringing focus on areas that are usually overlooked in normal migration interventions. The guiding principles of the GCM are a very good way of filling these gaps. In our experience, the topic of human rights is becoming central to our discussions. And for the first time in Ghana's migration discussions and governance, we have actually included the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice of Ghana because the GCM has a human rights dimension. This was possible through the support we received from the network, and I think this can be replicated in other countries as well. To conclude, the network's support for fostering meaningful partnerships for GCM implementation at the national level is key. Meaningful and long-standing partnerships with relevant actors, government, international development partners, and regional entities such as ECOWAS, in the case of Ghana, are very critical. Thank you very much, David.
Merci beaucoup pour cette intervention très claire et très directe et d'insister sur l'importance des partenariats. Donc je vais ouvrir la discussion tout de suite. Si vous voulez intervenir, donc encore une fois, on veut vraiment se mettre l'accent sur comment on peut améliorer le travail du réseau, en particulier dans le soutien aux États membres. Dans la deuxième partie, on parlera des autres parties prenantes. Et je vais, pour commencer, donner la parole à Hein de Haas, pour qu'il nous, après sa présentation brillante ce matin, pour qu'il partage un petit peu ses pensées sur comment il voit le travail du réseau, qui est peut-être un peu loin des préoccupations académiques, mais c'est bien de faire le lien, justement. Hein, over to you.
Merci, David. Yeah, I'm an academic, so it's a different sort of angle. But I think it is very valuable to indeed think about what can be done in practice and indeed to develop networks to think what we can do practically. There was just one theme I would like to pick up that was mentioned, perhaps also cross-cutting themes that I hear also from other sessions. And of course, we all know that in order to increase the development potential of migration, certain conditions need to be put in place. And of course, migrants should be supported in that effort. And of course, networks and states can contribute to that a lot practically, but also more in terms of guidance. But I think there's a very important issue to be made. Also, we had quite some interesting discussions about the need to have better narratives, right? And to contribute to better narratives. In a way, we cannot de-link the migrant rights issue from the migration and development issue, because governments all like circular migration. We often hear that, right? But what happens often with the sort of misguided migration policies, that migrants get stuck in a way in destination countries because they are afraid to go back, either because they're undocumented, don't have enough rights, but it also means exploitation on the labor market, and all these kind of factors decrease the development potential of migration. So that is the sort of, when I was listening earlier today, the sort of link I think we should also make, instead of only talking about what could happen in the origin countries, that in a way, the position of migrants in destination countries and the rights and the income and the resources they can access and the mobility options they have are actually very important. I had one small anecdote that made me think of that. I once was sitting in a so-called Grand Taxi in Morocco in a taxi driver, and he was asking me, what are you doing? And I said, I'm studying migration. And he showed his Italian residence card. And he said to me, when I got my Italian residency, I went back to Morocco and started to invest in my taxi enterprise. It's a small example, but it tells a lot about how the issue of migrant rights is linked to the development contribution of migration, because for him, gaining migration status and residency allowed him to go back and indeed to invest his hard-earned money into his small enterprise. And I think that links to a broader issue that I think a sort of cross-cutting theme that I find quite interesting, that I think we should make those linkages. Say, well, actually giving migrants better rights and guaranteeing their rights as workers, as citizens, as refugees also means they can contribute more to origin country development. There was a small sort of remark I would like to make, David. I hope it fulfills your expectations. Yeah.
Très bien, merci Hein. En fait, demain, nous aurons une session sur les droits, mais c'est bien de faire ce lien entre les droits des personnes migrantes et le développement. Donc, si vous voulez intervenir, s'il vous plaît, mettez le nom de votre pays ou de votre organisation de manière verticale. Et je vois que el señor embajador de Colombia quiere intervenir.
Muchas gracias, doctor Kudur. Y un saludo a todas las personas presentes. Agradezco que ya para finalizar la sesión haya no solo alcanzado a participar, sino que amablemente le doy a usted la palabra. Quiero resaltar que el hecho de haber tenido el Foro Mundial sobre Migración y Desarrollo la semana previa ha permitido que tengamos la participación de varias de las organizaciones de la sociedad civil acá en Ginebra, con muy buenos aportes, como lo hemos podido constatar durante el día. Me alegra también haber alcanzado a estar en esta sesión liderada por usted, doctor Kudur, del PNUD, con la participación del Banco Mundial y los representantes de Ghana, porque esta temática es clave para empezar a darle forma a las prioridades que tendremos de cara al Foro Mundial sobre Migración y Desarrollo. Por último, quiero hacer un llamado a que trabajemos conjuntamente entre la Red de las Naciones Unidas para la Migración y el Foro Mundial sobre Migración y Desarrollo. Ambos espacios deben ayudarnos a liderar desafíos y oportunidades. Como lo mencioné el viernes, en nuestra calidad de próximo presidente del Foro Global sobre Migración y Desarrollo, Colombia estará abierta al diálogo para revisar dinámicas e innovar desde una narrativa positiva y donde podamos discutir sobre regularización, sobre tránsito y desarrollo, sobre integración y sobre mujer, juventud y paz. Y aprovechando la intervención del profesor Haas, un posible quinto mecanismo dirigido a la academia. Profesor Haas, varios delegados ya me comentaron que su intervención esta mañana fue realmente notable, así que me da la razón para que creemos un quinto mecanismo. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, señor embajador. Et merci de rappeler les liens étroits entre le Forum mondial sur les migrations et le développement et le réseau des Nations Unies pour les migrations. Je vais donner maintenant la parole à un représentante, je ne suis pas sûre, du Venezuela qui est en ligne.
Hola, muchas gracias. En beneficio del... disculpen. En beneficio tenemos disponible, pues trataré ser lo más breve posible. Sin embargo, siendo la primera vez que mi delegación toma la palabra, espero poder con la ventaja de la transversalidad de los temas que se tratan en la reunión, con la intención de abarcar asuntos pertinentes a los 3 paneles que hemos escuchado durante el día. Y en primer lugar quisiéramos agradecer las presentaciones de los panelistas que sin duda han establecido una sólida base para nuestras discusiones. En ese sentido quisiéramos realizar algunas reflexiones. Lo primero que nos gustaría observar es que de conformidad con las presentaciones y las reflexiones que nos han traído los panelistas, y ya a más de 5 años de la adopción del Pacto Mundial, pensamos que se hace evidente la necesidad de una evaluación crítica de su implementación. Por supuesto que reconocemos y valoramos los esfuerzos realizados, pero parece necesario, imperativo, desarrollar mecanismos más justos y más eficaces. Y para Venezuela, uno de los desafíos claves es asegurar la formulación de políticas migratorias independientes y equitativas, centradas en las necesidades y derechos de los migrantes y en los intereses de los países de origen y destino. Como país en desarrollo, nos preocupa que las desigualdades económicas globales puedan influir, como en efecto lo hacen en las políticas migratorias internacionales. Es un hecho que estas políticas corren el riesgo de estar influenciadas por las prioridades de donantes, potencialmente desatendiendo las necesidades reales de migrantes y países receptores, y de países de origen, naturalmente. Esta situación pensamos que se agrava con modelos de financiamiento que están basados, como sabemos, en el condicionamiento de los recursos, en la preasignación de los recursos, lo que pensamos compromete la coherencia y la sostenibilidad de las políticas migratorias. Entonces, en este contexto, la narrativa migratoria actual a menudo parece reflejar intereses limitados y no siempre representa las realidades de los países en desarrollo, que al fin y al cabo son los principales receptores de los migrantes. Apoyamos naturalmente muchos llamados de los panelistas que se han dirigido a nosotros el día de hoy, a un modelo de financiamiento más flexible y adaptado a las realidades y necesidades de los países receptores. Y en este contexto es esencial también fomentar una colaboración internacional más equitativa, donde todos los actores, incluidos los actores de países en desarrollo, tengan una voz significativa en la formulación de políticas migratorias a nivel global. Concretamente quisiera referirme a los logros que nos han presentado el día de hoy sobre el fondo en los primeros 5 años. Sin embargo, observamos con preocupación, igual que varios de los panelistas, que la demanda de recursos continúa siendo mucho mayor que la oferta, y esto es una preocupación constante para Venezuela en el marco de la implementación del pacto, pero también en el marco de las actividades de la OIM, de la organización. Entonces es vital, como les digo, pues explorar modelos de financiamiento sostenibles y justos que no dependan únicamente de un grupo limitado de donantes. Y por supuesto, una medida hacia el futuro o una expectativa de Venezuela sería que el fondo pueda diversificar sus fuentes de financiación y buscar como otros han propuesto, colaboraciones innovadoras con financiamiento flexible, no condicional. Un asunto que quisiéramos observar es que también consideramos necesario que se promuevan enfoques integrales en los programas del fondo, y en particular que abarquen las causas económicas de la migración y no se limiten específicamente o solamente a la seguridad y control fronterizo. Es posible que el gasto en materia de seguridad y control fronterizo pueda ser mejor aprovechado en la colaboración y la facilitación de la cooperación entre países y organizaciones y en enfrentar los problemas que impulsan a la migración desordenada e irregular. Entonces, en este mismo contexto, pues es necesario instaurar una reflexión sobre las causas fundamentales de la migración, incluyendo el impacto de políticas económicas y la aplicación de medidas coercitivas unilaterales y legales que a menudo son ignoradas. Estas medidas, por supuesto, debo decirlo, además de violar el derecho internacional, afectan seriamente las condiciones de los países, dificultan la colaboración y la cooperación internacional. Por eso es urgente que el fondo implemente estrategias para facilitar una participación activa de los países en desarrollo en la formulación de políticas y programas, asegurando que las voces y experiencias sean consideradas. Y en una última reflexión, en lo que respecta concretamente a las acciones futuras propuestas para la red, por supuesto, es imperativo adoptar un análisis más profundo que contemple plena e integralmente el potencial de una migración bien gestionada para el desarrollo. Y en este sentido, la Red de Naciones Unidas desempeña un papel crucial. Este mecanismo debería poder enfatizar y promover las contribuciones económicas, culturales y sociales de los migrantes en sus países de recepción, incluyendo su participación activa en el mercado laboral y la transferencia de habilidades y conocimiento. A tal efecto, creemos que es necesario facilitar una cooperación estrecha y efectiva entre los países de origen, tránsito y destino. Esta cooperación es esencial para gestionar la migración de una manera más eficiente y humanitaria, inclusive. Se debe promover un intercambio equilibrado de apoyo, de recursos y apoyo de manera constructiva. Esto, estamos seguros, redundará en la implementación de políticas más coherentes, políticas migratorias más coherentes, y la creación de canales de migración seguros y legales, garantizando pues, que todos los estados participen y se beneficien de manera más equitativa en esos esfuerzos. Un tratamiento en igualdad de condiciones entre los estados, garantizando que las políticas y programas se adapten a las necesidades específicas de cada país, asegurando que los beneficios de la migración se distribuyan de manera justa y equitativa, es un requisito fundamental para el éxito, para definir el éxito que la red puede tener en su mandato. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Je vais donner la parole au Japon et après on va passer à la deuxième partie de la session sur les autres parties prenantes et comme je vois qu'il y a pas mal de gens de la société civile qui veulent intervenir, donc on va faire ça dans la deuxième partie de la session. Japon, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you. On behalf of the government of Japan, I would like to thank the organizers of this conference, and I would like to make general comments. With the number of forced migrants in the world growing larger than ever before, the implementation of GCM is a key issue. I appreciate the role of IOM as coordinator of the GCM in this regard, and also we are also very interested in the regional review to be issued this year. Japan especially would like to promote collaboration with development partners and private partnerships, which were discussed at today's meeting. I would like to report today's meeting to Tokyo and would like to further contribute to the implementation of GCM. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Je vais maintenant revenir à nos intervenants ici sur le podium. Et donc, nous allons écouter Monsieur Shakirul Islam, qui est le président fondateur du programme du Bangladesh Ovibashi Karmi Unnayan. Et donc, il va nous présenter quelques vues du point de vue de la société civile sur le rôle du réseau et comment on peut mieux favoriser l'engagement des différentes parties prenantes non gouvernementales, encore une fois en mettant l'accent sur les questions de développement puisque c'est l'objectif de cette session. Merci.
Respected moderator, sir, panelists, co-panelists, colleagues, friends, comrades from different government, non-government sectors. So it's really my pleasure to be invited and to bring the migrant workers' voices here in this kind of platform. And when you are talking about Ovibashi Karmi Unnayan program, it means a grassroots migrant organization, meaning that migrant workers development program. So it's really my pleasure to bring the voices here. If I talk about the issue of maximizing the benefits from different sectors, particularly non-state sectors, first of all, I will focus on connections or disconnections, what you say, both, I mean, between the level at this moment globally, and also the level at regional and national level, because what we are discussing here, that it's really my pleasure that I'm present here, I'm listening, and it's my pleasure to contribute here. But I don't see that this kind of reflection is really happening at regional and national level. So I really feel that we really need to have a very good connections of this kind of discourse and discussions at all levels, so that we all are prepared to contribute in a meaningful way. And in relation to that, I really feel that we should have a very comprehensive action plan. In most of the cases, the GCM is non-binding, and then the government, particularly in our part of the world, have not very much focused on implementation of this kind of framework. But the UN, you are providing technical supports to the government, so that they have this kind of action plan at national level for implementation. But my point is, when you are providing technical supports, it's really important to engage all other stakeholders, particularly from the civil society, to make it more participatory. It's not that only the consultant, they will interview us and prepare document. I'm saying that it's really bring all of them together to discuss, so that everybody own the document. Because if there is no ownership and it's only a paper, then there is no use of, because the government has no urgency to implement it. On the other hand, we are not able to actually follow or focus. So that's why this is something very important from grassroots perspective, that we need to ensure very meaningful participation from all actors. My second point is, when you talk about migration, development, or any issue, so most of the cases we try to bring the positive side, so that it makes sense and it makes happy all the stakeholders. But being a migrant organization, I'm very much critical, and I really feel that it's really important to bring the honest conversation, particularly the ground realities, the ground challenges, and the gaps, so that we really bring these issues, and we can discuss, and we can come up with a proper solution. And when we talk about solution, it's not only that yes, we at the higher level we prepare or design the solutions. I always consider that it should come up from the bottom, because it's ultimately the migrant workers and their families whose perspectives, whose needs need to be addressed in terms of designing any policy or projects, whatever we say. So their participation, their perspectives is very much important. And that's why, the engagement of local level organizations, grassroots level organizations, the non-state actors is really important. I just, when we talk about the legal pathways, we can, refer circular migration or seasonal migration is very good. I mean, very, very successful or very relevant for the migrant workers. But if we talk about the Bangladesh context, whether it is really helpful for the Bangladeshi migrant workers, I would say no, because the recruitment, the unethical recruitment practices, they actually take a huge amount of migration cost, and seasonal or circular migration is only for 9 months in a year. So when a migrant worker pay a lot of money for the recruitment, and they are not able to recover their expenses within 9 months, so they do not want to return back. So that's why they become undocumented. So it's, I mean, the circular migration is good for some particular countries, but it's not a very good option for the other countries. So that's why we really need to consider the context, what the need actually from particular area or region. And my third point, although it has been discussing from the very beginning, even in the GFMD, creating wider space. I said wider space, resources and equitable partnerships for civil society. So when I talk about wider space, I must say that, you know, the UN and the government must create more space for civil society, particularly at national level, so that we have our own space to talk, to bring our own issues, problems and solutions as well. But unfortunately, in many cases, it's, I mean, the participation of the civil society is very much tokenistic. To take the global concept of the whole of society approach, it means that, you know, when we come, when we discuss within hours, and then it's being said that yes, the civil society was there, but I want more specific, creating particularly at national level, more engagement with the civil society other than participating in consultations and workshop like something. So so that's really important. I think I understand the civil society is diverse. There are many difficulties, complexities, but I will emphasize that yes, you people should create more space for us so that we bring our own voices. And if I talk about the equitable partnership, I mean that it should be very respectful and equal treatment, because being a grassroots migrant organization, I very often feel bad or feel like you know, the people in the even the people in the government, they are much more superior than us. So this kind of complex, I mean, it's very difficult to explain, but you know, the attitude, the you know, the behavior, these are this is something that hurt us, and you know, so that's why it creates some kind of you know, backbench like situation for us. So that's something I will focus, that you really need to focus on these. And then I have another point. It's like, you know, in many cases, the UN organizations are intergovernmental organizations. Oh, okay, I'll finish. Intergovernmental organizations. So they have some limitations, right? So that's why I'm saying that the UN organizations create space for the civil society so that we can raise our own issues, we can negotiate with our own governments. And finally, I mean, it's really important to create resources for the civil society participation in the whole process. In many cases that we participate ad hoc basis in different consultations at national level, because we don't have even enough human resources to participate, to make sure the consistency and, you know, create knowledge base in our own organization. So that's why I think spending or resources, investing resources to the civil society is very important, and also for the capacity building of the representative of the civil society, so that we have very clear understanding all the processes, and we really can engage and meaningfully and give our, you know, highest inputs to maximize the benefits in this migration development process. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Islam, pour ces points sur l'engagement de la société civile qui est effectivement clé pour le succès du fonctionnement du réseau des Nations Unies. Je vais revenir, il y avait déjà des mains levées précédemment, donc je vais donner la parole d'abord à la représentante de MYCP.
Thank you. My name is Milena, and I represent the Migration Youth and Children Platform. It is a privilege to join you today to contribute to the discussion on proposing future actions for the network on behalf of the youth stakeholder group. We are a group for and by young people to impact the highest levels of international migration policy making. Conversations cannot be meaningful if youth are excluded. In this breath, to further promote youth engagement, our regional teams at MYCP hope to organize regional GCM youth talks in collaboration with local partners and organizations to ensure that youth are consulted and included at all levels. To achieve this, there are two things I would like to mention. First, in order to build effective partnerships, youth migrant initiatives focused on the SDGs and the achievement of the GCM goals need to be recognized as key actors connecting people on the move at the local and grassroots levels. They should be seen as equal partners, which brings me to the second point. Echoing Carolina's contributions from the previous panel, the extent of the work and youth representation is heavily limited by the funds available and voices on the table. As a result, a key aspect of these effective partnerships is taking meaningful steps to establish youth inclusion in the GCM process by giving us access to the table, allowing us to actively, effectively, and meaningfully engage in migration governance. This is why we hope to work with partners in UNNM, Regional Economic Commission, and key UN agencies to facilitate this process and explore avenues for further youth engagement and funding. In this way, on the one hand, we're not only able to present our priorities to member states, ensuring that this process results in valuable learning experiences and addresses the key priorities for our constituency, but on the other hand, increase our capacity to channel our efforts to actively influence the processes that affect all children and youth worldwide. To summarize, the engagement of youth in different processes across UN agencies is crucial in ensuring the development of the most vulnerable population in the world. Particularly at COP28 in Dubai, the need to push for a climate mobility agenda was stressed more than ever. However, a simple call for action is not enough. Only a proper implementation and enforcement of follow-up actions that considers a mixed approach of youth, civil society, and other stakeholders can fully push us forward with the appropriate UN bodies supporting respective initiatives. Youth do not want to be simply added to the agenda or to be asked to lead an initiative only to be forgotten afterwards. Youth do not want to be remembered. Youth need to be part of all tables that concern their very own matters in the present. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. C'est toujours rafraîchissant d'écouter la voix des jeunes et de voir que vous êtes amplement représentés dans cette session et dans ces réunions, même si effectivement, ça serait bien si on pouvait avoir encore plus de jeunes de différentes parties du monde. Donc, merci de nous rappeler ça. On va continuer avec la société civile, avec Afford.
Thank you again for the opportunity. And just to highlight a few more points on collaboration. To implement GCM to the level that we all need it to be, then collaboration lies at the heart of effective governance and policy implementation. And no single entity or stakeholder group can address the complexities of migration and development in isolation. And it is only through collaborative efforts that we can harness the collective expertise and resources each stakeholder brings a very unique perspective, capacities, and responsibilities to the table. And experiences are necessary to develop these sustainable solutions. Civil society, diaspora, migrant-led, and local authorities are first respondents in most cases through remittances during humanitarian crisis, volunteering their skills and expertise and time. And we intervene as investors in green economies as a tool for adaptation and mitigation of the effects of climate change. Diaspora and migrants also act as supporters, either as mediators or resource persons to support small-scale businesses on the ground. And this helps to build a very good labor scheme and skills mobility schemes for a lot of things. And I think we need to continue to create an enabling environment, especially for labor and skills mobility schemes. Most of the projects that civil society and key actors or stakeholders do are usually funded as pilots. After the pilot, everything ends. And all the lessons we have learned are never utilized to grow the projects to get into very good best case practices that can continue to be shared. And the last thing I want to address is the political climate and implications of a lot of things going on, especially in the West. I think when it comes to GCM implementation, most of the developed countries see it as a way of them supporting developing countries to implement the GCM. And all of us as stakeholders have signed up to a non-binding agreement, but willing to work together to achieve. If currently the pro-migration governments are picking and choosing which of the objectives to work through, what will happen when we have anti-migration governments in place? It's going to be worse. And we need to create that environment that prevents and allows everyone to really build on all the efforts that have been put in since the adaptation of GCM and all the other necessary mechanisms that have been put in place so we can achieve better results for everyone. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. Je vais revenir du côté des États membres et donner la parole à la Turquie.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur Co-Chair. I will continue in English. As you know, diaspora communities add value and bring energy, skills, and new ideas to host countries. They contribute to sustainable development of both host countries and country of origins. More than 200 million migrant workers around the world support their families by transferring remittances back home. And this is another source of for sustainable development. And members of diaspora become politicians, entrepreneurs, and opinion leaders, and they build a social and economic cultural bridges between their origin countries and hosting countries. And as you remember, in 2022, we had a global diaspora summit and led by Agyemang as a leading actor of network and co-hosted by government of Ireland. And we reached a consensus on Dublin Declaration on that. And we have to recognize the substantial contribution of diaspora on realizing the GCM objective and sustainable development. That's why we believe the network should underline the importance of the Global Diaspora Summit and its outcome and combine all efforts to harness the capacity of diaspora communities. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. On va revenir à la société civile avec la... Pardon, je dois déchiffrer. Avec la coalition pour la dignité et les droits des femmes. Excusez-moi, je crois que la personne est en ligne.
Alors, je suis Madame Lahrajtouria. Je représente Coalition Dignité et Droits des Femmes. C'est une coalition qui regroupe des syndicalistes, des organisations féminines et des organisations des droits de l'homme. Et nous travaillons surtout pour la ratification de la Convention 190, la Convention de l'OIT et la recommandation 206 qui traite la violence dans le monde du travail. Donc, pour nous, concernant le partenariat entre les différents acteurs dans le monde de l'immigration, de notre côté, du côté de la société civile, excusez-moi, je n'ai pas dit que nous sommes dans le MENA. Et donc, il y a le pays du Golfe, il y a l'Orient et puis il y a l'Afrique du Nord. Excusez-moi, je n'avais pas précisé géographiquement où nous nous trouvons. Donc, pour justement ce débat de partenariat et de développement, pour la société civile, elle a besoin d'abord d'un interlocuteur au niveau gouvernemental. Parce que comme vous voyez, il y a différents interlocuteurs. Il faut qu'il y ait une structure gouvernementale qui traite des sujets de l'immigration, c'est-à-dire les émigrés nationaux qui sont ailleurs et les émigrés qui sont dans nos pays respectifs. Et donc, le fait de décider, préciser les interlocuteurs nous permettrait d'avoir un dialogue entre la société civile et, bien sûr, les gouvernements. Concernant le développement, bien sûr que les émigrés contribuent au développement. Ils contribuent en tant que travailleurs, en tant que consommateurs et aussi en tant que matière grise. N'oubliez pas qu'actuellement, avec le problème du chômage et que nous sommes post-coronavirus, il y a beaucoup de personnes qui ont un haut niveau académique qui sont contraints d'émigrer pour pouvoir justement, il y a cette émigration économique et bien sûr, il y en a d'autres. Pour nous, il faut qu'il y ait doter la société civile. Le débat sur la société civile est aussi large. Qui est la société civile, qui pourrait représenter, mais aider la société civile pour qu'il y ait une voix pour les concernés, qui sont les émigrés, qu'ils soient hommes, femmes, jeunes ou assez âgés. Donc, il faut qu'il y ait que ça soit précis, sinon nous nous perdons. Il y a des organisations de la société civile qui commencent à faire justement d'un plaidoyer ou d'un travail quelconque son travail à elles. Non, nous sommes en tant qu'organisation nationale que des croix intermédiaires et un travail intermédiaire pour donner une voix et une place aux émigrés eux-mêmes pour qu'ils puissent aussi, de leur côté, défendre leurs droits. Je pense qu'il y a le pacte international et il y a aussi les stratégies au niveau national. Et c'est clair, et donc je parle du Maroc et quelques pays du Golfe, mais ce qu'il y a, c'est qu'il y a toujours un grand fossé entre le discours, les stratégies et l'application. Et donc, nous considérons qu'il faut renforcer justement le travail de la société civile et bien sûr de l'OIM et aussi des gouvernements et aussi il y a des institutions comme par exemple au Maroc, il y a le Conseil économique et social qui s'intéresse aux droits des immigrés comme il y en a dans d'autres pays du MENA. Il y a aussi le Conseil des droits de l'homme qui traite les migrations. Et donc, il faut essayer de trouver ces espaces qui nous permettraient de traiter de façon égale. Concernant... oui,
si vous pouvez conclure, s'il vous plaît.
Je conclus. Alors, moi, ce que je pourrais faire en tant que coordinatrice de la coalition Dignité et Droits des femmes, je dirais que nous serons plutôt contents de recevoir et pourraient participer à une rencontre qui aura lieu au Maroc pour parler justement des droits des femmes et notamment traiter ce côté qui est très important, qui est le droit des femmes émigrées. Et comme vous le savez, il y a beaucoup de femmes arabes qui sont émigrées et il y a beaucoup de femmes qui sont émigrées dans des pays arabes, notamment de l'Afrique du Nord, du Golfe. Merci merci de m'avoir écouté. Au revoir.
Merci beaucoup. Je vais donner la parole à une dernière intervenante pour cette question et après on va revenir au panel. Je crois donc avoir Paola Camilli de Building and Woodworkers International, BWI.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the esteemed panelists and brothers, Shakirul Islam, and all those who intervened before me, especially appreciated the intervention from Professor Haas, and definitely as representative from the trade union movement, I can't agree more with you. We cannot disentangle development from rights. After all, the best strategy for development is to create decent work opportunities and to reduce the need to migrate as a means of survival. So thank you very much for recalling this. Violation of human rights in the sectors that BWI represents, these are those of building, construction, and woodworkers globally, are very common. But that is especially true for migrant workers who constitute a large share of the workforce in our sector in construction. So therefore, to implement the GCM effectively, as we all would want, we need both the collective efforts from all the actors around, but also the political will to bring migrants under the full labor protections and fundamental rights in line with the international labor standards. This means removing those barriers that still exist to ensure the migrant workers, as all other workers, can freely associate with others in associations of their own choosing and can bargain collectively to improve their conditions at the workplace, to access social protection, to access quality public services, but also to ensure the right to health, as they face in our sectors, but in many other sectors, increased risks in the face of climate change and in the face of extreme weather events. So ensuring those rights is not just a moral imperative, it also helps to mitigate the global potential economic losses that are estimated in billions to climate change, loss in working hours by 2030 and 2050. So looking forward to sustainable development, our call is that the network engages even more with UN agencies like the ILO, social partners, the affected workers, and all the stakeholders who have the capacity, the tools, the expertise, and the representativeness to ensure policy coherence and to promote an agenda where fair migration and decent work go hand in hand, not only in the country of destination, but also in those of origin and of transit. Any such agenda must be evidence-based. It has to rely on actual labor market needs, should promote skills recognition, access to justice, access to remedy mechanism when abuses happen, and shall be designed in consultation with those affected, the workers, their representative trade unions, through meaningful social dialogue. To conclude, I wanted to join the call of the many stakeholders here in the room, a call that has been raised several times today, that is to trust migrant workers and to sustain their own capacity to articulate their own needs, to monitor the implementation of policies on the ground through their meaningful involvement. This will be, colleagues, the most effective way to ensure the policies effectively achieve decent work on the ground and ensure that human rights are respected and promoted. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, et c'est bien d'écouter aussi la voix du secteur privé. Je vais finalement donner la parole à Andrea Heath-London, qui va nous parler d'une question plus spécifique sur comment le réseau peut mieux mesurer et faire le suivi de l'évaluation de l'impact du développement de notre travail. Voilà. Andrea.
Thank you, David. Excellencies, colleagues, warm greetings. May I propose that the starting basis should be us making full use of all the entry points available to the network. It was noted in one of the background notes, and I'd like to read it, that CCA's common country analyses are better reflecting opportunities and challenges to sustainable development associated with human mobility. But this is not necessarily translating into cooperation frameworks and related programming. But I would urge that the work should continue nevertheless, Because our common country analysis, when we develop these, it represents the analysis, and the analysis therefore exists. With this analysis, we can then support and inform national development and assist our governments with national development planning, where we focus on the positive contributions that migrants can make to the host societies, communities, and the countries as a whole. Cooperation frameworks, which are the primary instrument for planning and implementation of the UN Development System support to national sustainable development goals priorities, really considers the strategic priorities outlined in these very national development plans, along with the UN's comparative advantage. Therefore, we must make sure that we continue making this link. But for this to happen, it means that the network has to continue to support our resident coordinators and our UN country teams in making sure that the analysis is strong, that national governments are supported, and that these cooperation frameworks really speak to the benefits of human mobility. From these cooperation frameworks, we move to the joint work programs. And here again, we have another opportunity for integrating human mobility. But this requires a whole of system approach. And this is why it's important for the network to use this as well as an entry point. Ladies and gentlemen, we know about the 6 transitions, which are investment pathways to delivering the Sustainable Development Goals. Quickly to name them, they're energy, education, climate and environment, digital transformation, and the global accelerator on jobs and social protection, as well as food systems. These transitions are important for us. We know that 2030 is just around the bend, but nevertheless, we can continue the good work. And so we can consider how human mobility can support the attainment of these transition pathways. It is an entry point, particularly for those countries that are developing cooperation frameworks in 2024, and in Africa's 8 are slated to design in 2024, with another 11 in 2025. So this is where the network can use as an entry point to make sure that even at this level, in accelerating these 6 transitions, that we really consider the support of human mobility and how migrants can help to achieve these transitions. The gamut of support, we have already discussed this, spanning from data to knowledge, expertise, but working through solutions, viable solutions to address the complexities of the human mobility and the fluidity, I would suggest. We know that these vary across regions and even across sub-regions. So these entry points, I think, and I would suggest and propose to you that we need to make full use of these whilst keeping our eyes out for new ones. I do believe that if we do so, and it's not just numerical, but the qualitative support, then it would really serve as a good basis for measuring our support as a network. And as one of the team members, I'm really happy to have been part of the network, and I'm still part of the network. Please join us and support us. Thank you. Chair, over.
Merci beaucoup, Andrea. C'était très clair. Et j'ai oublié de présenter Andrea, j'en suis désolé, mais vous avez compris. Donc, c'est la spécialiste de planification et de coordination du développement à R-DCO en Afrique. Désolé pour ce décalage. Je voudrais redonner la parole à la salle avant qu'on finisse cette session. J'avais une dette avec, je crois, le bloc latino-américain. Ou je me trompe, j'ai du mal à voir. Enfin, en tout cas.
Hola. I think it's Marlene. Hola, buenas tardes. Soy Marlene Montenegro, soy de Guatemala. Formo parte de ECAP y del bloque latinoamericano en migración. Agradecerles a todas las personas que nos han compartido sus experiencias y cómo ven la temática migratoria desde los distintos espacios donde trabajan. Desde la sociedad civil vemos necesario el promover la articulación de los distintos actores y actoras que se vinculan en la implementación del Pacto Mundial, teniendo a las personas migrantes en el centro de las acciones, escuchando sus necesidades para poder atenderlas. Todas las voces deben ser escuchadas y tomadas en cuenta, principalmente las voces de las personas migrantes. Ahora hemos estado hablando de desarrollo, pero ¿qué estamos entendiendo y comprendiendo por desarrollo? En nuestros países, al hablar de desarrollo, muchas veces se piensa en los megaproyectos o en la industria extractivista, que lo que produce es la escasez del agua y se lleva todas las propiedades del suelo. Cuando nuestras poblaciones sobreviven de la agricultura, esto afecta y promueve un desplazamiento forzado y una migración. Tenemos que preguntar a las comunidades de base qué están entendiendo por desarrollo. En la mañana decía una de las compañeras que no se hagan estudios desde los escritorios, que se parta del terreno, de la realidad de las personas migrantes. Mi invitación desde la sociedad civil es que tengamos una participación activa y real de los distintos actores y actoras que se vinculan para la implementación del Pacto Mundial y que no sean consideradas la sociedad civil o las voces de los migrantes como un simple requisito, pero que al final de cuentas no son aceptadas sus opiniones. Y bueno, es un trabajo al que nos tenemos que unir, al que tenemos que trabajar de manera conjunta, unir esfuerzos, unir experiencias y conocimientos para el beneficio de todas las personas que se ven forzadas a migrar. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, merci beaucoup. On a une demande d'intervention en ligne d'un chercheur, professeur à l'université de Perpignan, Rafael Paredes, si vous êtes en ligne. Et peut-être UNDESA veut intervenir sur la question des indicateurs.
Hello everyone, I am Rafael Paredes Ramones. I am part of the University of Perpignan. I'm doing a PhD around the subject, and I really think it's important for me to speak about it. The question I have to answer in this case will be the monitor or measure of the development impact of this kind of projects. And I will say that firstly, we will have to establish some clear goals and indicators, being the SMART indicators the best ones. Being specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bounded. The approach for it should be based on an outcome, key performance indicators made by the baseline data that is collected before the project and a benchmarking progress that renews and adds new information on several indicators on an answer to every need. I am currently doing a PhD around this subject for an historical perspective, and I think I will have a very substantial conclusion once I end it. And I will be happy to share the results once my PhD will be ended. But for the moment, I can only give you some advances. For example, for having a good measure for everything, I will say that having less independent migrations policies for a single page, having less immigration policies for, for individuals is not the same as having more following human mobilizations. For example, being an organism, an international organism, we can have more strength and less external influence that can rely only on the luck of the people. People only rely, for example, on a long-distance relative or a friend that may disappear and make the other only making them only being forced to have relied on only just an association that luckily are. I have been in several associations like the Restos du Cœur or the Association for International Workers in Perpignan, and I luckily know how it works. I've been in the CIMAT also, and I've seen a lot of people that were forgotten. And the thing is that too much people travel alone. Too much people live alone. They don't even notify their families, and they don't have an institutional guidance. For example, a good example that will help is the European Solidarity Corps or the Erasmus. There's a following path for who is going to do it and who did it. And there's the outcome and the shapers and the numbers and everything around it. So the thing is, if we establish, for example, a web page that say, where do you want to go? Where do you come from? What can you do? And being more open about it will be a little help for everything, will provide us with the numbers, and will keep us a track of who is doing what and where without obviously not attacking the personal liberty. So, and for example, we know those exist, the European Solidarity Corps and the Erasmus. The thing is, there's a path for qualifying for that. And
sorry, could you conclude, please?
Yeah, of course. I was about to do it. And the thing is that as long as people goes alone, they will be forgotten. And as long as they are followed, accompanied, and helped, we can have the ciphers for have the correct measure to know what's happening and how can we improve that. Thank you very much, and thanks for what you do.
Parmi les points importants, et ça, on en a beaucoup déjà discuté, c'est la question de meilleurs récits narratifs. On a besoin, en tant que membre du réseau, d'arriver à développer des récits narratifs qui vont un peu à l'encontre ou beaucoup à l'encontre de tout ce qu'on entend aujourd'hui sur les questions de migration. Ça inclut évidemment tout ce qui a à voir avec la discrimination, avec la lutte contre le racisme et aussi mettre plus en avant la contribution des migrants, des personnes migrantes au développement, aussi bien dans les pays d'accueil que de destination, les pays d'origine que de destination. Et ça prend en compte, et ça a été mentionné plusieurs fois, l'action climatique. Et les migrants, les diasporas ont un rôle de plus en plus important à jouer en matière d'action climatique. Ensuite, un point qui est important, c'est aussi la cohérence des politiques migratoires et la cohérence des politiques pour le développement. On n'en a peut-être pas assez parlé dans le cadre du réseau. La question de la cohérence entre politique migratoire et politique commerciale a été mentionnée et aussi la réduction des inégalités internationales. On ne peut pas d'un côté dire qu'on veut moins de migration et de l'autre avoir des politiques commerciales de plus en plus protectionnistes ou des politiques qui contribuent à accroître les inégalités au lieu de les réduire. Ensuite, il y a une question qui est importante. On a dissocié, on a une session cet après-midi sur le développement, une session demain sur les droits des personnes migrantes. Et en fait, on se rend compte que tout est lié. C'est les deux faces de la même monnaie. On ne peut pas avoir une contribution des personnes migrantes au développement sans que leurs droits sont respectés, y compris les droits des femmes, et ça a été beaucoup répété, qui sont victimes de plus de violations encore de leurs droits souvent que les hommes. Donc, il faut plus de droits humains, plus de droits pour les personnes migrantes pour aussi contribuer à augmenter la contribution au développement, et ça inclut toutes les normes en matière de travail. Et finalement, la question des partenariats est au cœur de tout ça. On a parlé de partenariats sur les mobilités de compétences, sur la reconnaissance des compétences, la reconnaissance des diplômes. C'est important de rappeler que la migration, ça inclut la migration internationale. En tout cas, ça inclut plusieurs pays et développer des politiques, et j'en reviens à la cohérence des politiques, développer des politiques en autarcie sans tenir compte de ce qui se passe dans les autres pays, c'est quasiment impossible. Donc, il faut développer la collaboration pour justement accroître la contribution au développement. Et dans cette question des partenariats, inclure de plus en plus la société civile, ça a été mentionné, travailler avec le secteur privé. Et quand on parle de la société civile, ce sont les personnes migrantes, ce sont les diasporas, mais aussi les communautés d'accueil. C'est important, on ne peut pas travailler sans tenir compte des personnes qui vivent dans les communautés. Donc ça, c'est très important. Et comment, par rapport au réseau, puisque finalement, on est là pour parler du réseau, on peut aussi développer plus de ressources pour que la société civile puisse être plus engagée, y compris les jeunes et y compris au niveau local et pas seulement des représentations nationales. Voilà. Je vais maintenant laisser la place de nouveau. On ferme la boucle à ma collègue et néanmoins amie de l'OIM, Cécile Rialan.
Thank you so much, David. And so gracias a todos y todas. Merci à tous et à toutes. Warm thanks to all of you for your active participation, both in the room and as well as online. We had about 120 people that followed these discussions online. And I think that was truly a rich discussion. That's the tradition to say it was a rich discussion, but I think actually it was very, very true in that particular case. So I have the task to wrap up our conversation today, and I wanted to, and particularly to kind of highlight from everything we've heard, what does it mean for the road ahead for the UN Network on Migration? How do we bring all of this in the way we are working so that it's not just business as usual? And there's one key word that I would like to bring as a conclusion and as a framing, in fact, of my concluding remarks, which is the one of scale. And obviously, if we want to have development impact through migration, we need to bring what we do at scale. So what will it take for us to do that? First of all, I think a lot of the things that we have been talking about, and David, you were summarizing very well some of those elements, are already embedded within the work streams of the UN Network on Migration. We have talked a lot about the importance of the narrative of migration, access to rights, as well as the critical dimension of the role of diasporas. We have heard a lot about as well the importance of migration pathways and how indeed through labor migration, this is how we are concretely articulating the development potential of migration, both for the societies that welcome and send migrants. We have talked about also the importance of looking at social protection, and skills, et cetera, et cetera. But just to say that, in fact, all of those topics are already very much at the heart of the work of the UN Network on Migration. If you look at our work streams, we are tackling all of those issues. But what is it that we need to do better? I think maybe what we are missing at this point in time is a way to kind of join these different work streams in a common trajectory of action. And I was really taken by what our colleague from DCO was saying, and I think it would be really instrumental, in fact, if we were to use potentially the lens of the transition pathways for the SDGs to, in fact, structure our work in the context of the network, so we can bring all of those dimensions in a trajectory of action and really connect this with how this is contributing to sustainable development down the line. So I think this calls about maybe questioning the way we are doing our work planning and how we are consolidating the work we do across the network. So that's one. That would be a way to gain scale. The other dimension that came out very strongly from our discussions is the one of financing for development. We are at this point in time very much, just a few months now ahead of the Summit of the Future. We know that the financing for development conversation is a critical one when we're looking at the future of multilateralism. And we need resources. And I think this came up time and time again in a lot of the interventions. And the resources are not infinite. We need to better leverage existing resources that are looking at financing for development. So how do we bring this conversation much more at the heart of the UN Network on Migration so that we can really leverage in an effective manner existing financial resources for development to really promote the positive impact of migration. So this is really important, therefore, that we look at it on, of course, from the perspective of strengthening the Migration Multi-Partnership Trust Fund, but that we actually go beyond and we look at, connecting those different elements. So we, again, have scale and for this work. Another important dimension, I think, that came up, and that also speaks to scale, is that the GCM is not just for the countries of origin of migration. And we need, I think, to bring that reality much more at the heart of the UN network on migration and how we engage also with the countries that are mostly receiving migrants. And this really will be true to what is the 2030 agenda. That is a universal agenda. So if we're looking at the development impact of human mobility, we need to look at it also from the perspective of what does it mean in the countries of destination and how through migration we are achieving one important objective, which is to reduce inequalities. Because we have to remember that migration was brought in the 2030 agenda through Goal 10 that precisely is looking at reducing inequalities. This needs to be a very important element of our work. And again, for that, we need to have scale. A fourth element, which I think was quite important, was related to doubling down the way we work at the country level. So how through the network we can structure ourselves so that we have more impact at country level. And I think we've heard really interesting ways to make this happen. We build on really important work and successes that we already have. So doing that at the country level, but also at the regional level, because it's very obvious that migration is most and foremost a regional reality. So how do we bring that reality within the work of the network? So again, we are making progress in structuring how we engage at regional level through the network, but there's still a road to travel. So I think that's really what will help us again to gain scale in this work. Also, another important element, and I think, David, you spoke a lot about this already in your concluding remark, that is, how do we really bring, let's say, meat, if I can use that word, behind the concept, the guiding principle of the GCM, that is the whole of society. So, and we've heard, I think, really important voices from the civil society in our deliberation this afternoon. This needs meaningful participation. We know that, because this is absolutely key, meaningful participation is key for one important element of, again, sustainable development, that is social cohesion. So how do we make sure that engagement with all stakeholders and particularly civil society actors is not done in a half-hearted manner, that this is really at the heart of all these processes to support GCM implementation. So that is absolutely key. And I think it was really interesting to hear that, in fact, we need also to support civil society to meaningfully engage. And for that, maybe we have to think about financially, what does it mean to make sure that civil society is engaged across the board? Because it's a lot of work. It needs a lot of resources. So let's think about this. And now just to conclude, I think we need to frame the work of the network through a keywords that actually is very much related to scale, which is the one of solutions, development solutions. This needs to be the lens through which we are communicating the impact that we are trying to deliver through our collective efforts as UN Network on Migration, again, bringing together the bulk of the UN development system under one umbrella. This is an incredible powerhouse. So we have so much to look forward to. So I will conclude here. Again, thanking you all for your patient listening, and really congratulations to the panelists, to my co-chairs. I think it was a very interesting discussion. Thanks to all.